right. So simplicity is a virtue, right? And it's also a pleasure. And in the food world, and in the trying nonchalantly, and I mean desperately, to impress my girlfriend world, there are a lot of seemingly complex things that one can make that are actually built of simple components. And one of my favorites is simple syrup. So this humble mixture of sugar and water is a key ingredient in a ton of delicious drinks and other recipes that you can make. And I'm gonna tell you how to make it. Whenever you're cooking, though, an important thing to understand is why you're doing what you're doing. If you understand some of the chemistry that's going on, you can improvise or even improve a recipe on the fly, and you look like a total badass. So I'm gonna mention a couple sugar reactions. We're not actually gonna do all of them, but it's helpful to know. So this one, the lovely Maillard reaction. This is amino acids reacting with sugars, and it's how you get the sear on a steak, it's how bacon becomes crispy, and it's how you get toasted bread. If you wanted to start a religion based around a chemical reaction, Maillard is the one for you. Caramelization is similar. It's the reaction of sugars with other sugars, and it creates all sorts of new compounds, and that's how you get that lovely smell, and you get the browning color and all sorts of new flavors. You can actually just stir sugar into water, that's called dissolving it, and that does technically make syrup, but it's also not a chemical reaction. You've just mixed them together. And therefore it's not gonna thicken the way we want, and it might separate out. So by adding heat, you actually produce the hydrolysis reaction. Here you actually split the sucrose double molecule into its components of glucose and fructose. The syrup will then thicken, and then it smooths and makes a beautiful component for what you're gonna make. So what do you need to accomplish this? Well, besides the sugar and water that I mentioned, just a pan and a heat source. You could do this on a campfire stove if you wanted. Now, unlike making macaroni and cheese where you just fill a pan with water and toss in the stuff and then pour out the water later, the proportions of water to sugar are important. A lot of people, you want to aim for something around a 1-to-1. A lot of people might go a little more water than sugar. Some like more sugar than water. The key is to experiment with a few things and find out what you like. So let's take this as an example. Put a cup of water and a cup of sugar in a small pan, bring it to a boil, let it simmer for 5 minutes, and then take it off, and voila. You've just made simple syrup. You can drink it straight, which is delicious. But I would recommend doing something else with it. As I mentioned at the beginning, there's a lot of classic cocktails that you can make where a simple syrup is the key ingredient. The old-fashioned, the mojito, the Sazerac, all of these use simple syrup. I should also mention that when you're at the level of making your own simple syrup to make drinks, you should probably just go ahead and start calling yourself a mixologist. No big deal. No, I just made this myself. It's cool. And if you're going to be a mixologist, then you got to make some flavored simple syrup. So let's do that. Now, there's lots of flavors you can make. Vanilla is actually the one that I have with me on stage. It's beautiful. Cut open a vanilla bean, toss that in while it's cooking, and to borrow a line from Parks and Rec, your kitchen is going to smell like Beyonce smells, I'm guessing. You can also toss a handful of mint leaves in the pot while it's boiling. Once you're done cooking, strain the mint leaves out, let it cool, and then you are all set to make a kick-ass mojito or even a mint julep. You can add citrus to simple syrup, and there you get, of course, the lemon lime flavor. But when you add acid, when you're boiling sugar, it turns it into invert syrup, which is sweeter than pure sugar and polarizes light. So if you really want to be awesome, you could measure how concentrated your sugar is by how much it polarizes light, which makes for a really good date to do. This is also the way to get ginger into drinks. If you want to make a gingerbread latte, or if you want to make a gingerbread flip, start with a ginger simple syrup. That's kind of the way to do it, and that's another great flavor. And then heading that direction, even try some more unusual things. Try savory herbs like rosemary or basil or even sage. They're things you wouldn't necessarily have making something, you wouldn't think of making something sweet out of, but the aromas that you get from this are really beautiful and add a really nice kick in whatever you put them in. And the key to all of this is to try it yourself. Try some flavors that you might like and experiment with your ratios. And once you can make a simple syrup, you're actually one step away from making one of my favorite recipes, Cheers, everybody.